I like Lucah, Born of a Dream. Everything is good besides one big issue, but luckily it's ignorable. I'm more of a gameplay over story type of guy. Sometimes I'll even forget what's going on, but at the end I'll eventually end up getting the gist of it. This one though, the story is like Kingdom Hearts, but you don't know what the words friendship or darkness mean. Before dropping into that, I want to talk about the best part of Lucah, the gameplay. Like every other game, this one is like Dark Souls in terms of how the world is in despair and there's lots of sorrow and people are kind of becoming fanatic in a way. And the combat is like it's mixed with Devil May Cry with how you can change styles for combos. In Lucah, those combat styles are called mantras. They differ in their damage, attack speed, and range. They also differ in what bonus they give, like some may give an additional bonus to defense or damage, range, things like that. There's also tech, which are like mods in Nier Automata where you can turn on or off things like UI or some gameplay mechanics. Then we have virtues that act like special effects where if you dodge at the right moment, it slows down time, or you can have it reduce stamina use while at full health. Acting as your ranged attack, you have familiars, which are little fluff balls that follow you around, which some act like shotguns, assault rifles, or focused shots. And with all of these different fighting mechanics, you do have to collect them all like you're the avatar. With how much you're given, there's an enjoyable freedom of customizing how you play with a mix and matching of everything. But as you get better mantras, pretty much all the others become useless, and it's far better just to stick to the high damage ones, or else you're going to be spending a lot of time trying to kill enemies. It's the same thing with familiars too, but overall they're just not that good besides the one that can heal you, because their damage just isn't worth it. The best part about this game is that the combat is impactful and fun, especially with how the sound effects greatly complement the ripping and tearing that you'll be doing. For example, when you pull off a successful parry, it has a very satisfying pop sound. However, I do have a couple of issues with the combat. Sometimes the camera is your enemy with how it jerks around when you're getting hit by a projectile from an enemy that's off screen. You're also unable to lock onto an enemy manually, which is annoying when the game has you attacking an enemy that you don't want to focus on. The sound effects are very good, but I do wish that the music was better. I honestly can't really remember any of the tracks. I have to keep looking back at my footage to see what it even sounds like. The music only comes on in certain areas and in combat. It's like a techno type of music. I'm not really sure how to put it. I don't know if I just didn't really care for it because it's not my type of music, but it didn't really feel like it added a whole lot to the game. So just take a listen and come up with your own opinion. There is a leveling up mechanic in Lucah where you can improve your stats with the currency you get from killing enemies. You only get a select few options to choose from each time you level up, and after you do, the options are shuffled. Plus sometimes one of the options might be a virtue that you can buy instead of a stat upgrade. If you happen to die, then your corruption increases. You can see it in the top right corner as a percentage. If it gets to the full 100%, then you can get an alternate ending, and that's about it. There's nothing else that's lost upon death, except having to go back to where you were. Luckily, you can avoid death if you use the rewind feature before you die, which takes you back to when you entered in the area, so you can say it's rewind time like your Will Smith. But there is a delay before it takes effect, and the same with healing, so be careful about that. Another great thing about Lucah is the visuals. To me, they're addicting. It's a very vivid and colorful look with a unique hand-drawn style that's a pleasure to look at when playing through the game. Despite all of the enemies being the same color, you can tell the difference between them and how they're designed. Each one looks different with their own attack patterns, so none of them feel like copy and pastes or just too similar. Although due to all of them being red, it can make it hard to see when things get wild and everyone piles onto each other like a fumble in an American football game. The world design, though, is honestly kind of bland. I wish there was a bit more detail or at least more landmarks that you can look at. The map is kind of jumbled too, but it's still readable and easy to navigate. Besides the combat tutorial, the game leaves you to discover the story and the world, which you can find notes and meet people and get more of an idea of what's going on. From your first impressions, you can see that the world is desolate, hopeless, and honestly, it gets pretty edgy, like a 2000 scare boy listening to My Chemical Romance. It's not all doom and gloom because you can buy a teleport thing that takes you to the familiar island where you can pet your friends. I'm not sure what other benefits this gives besides an achievement for petting all of them. Now on to the part that we've been waiting for and the worst part of this game. The story is very unclear and cryptic, and I'm not the only person that feels this way. I believe the problem resides in how there's too much flowery or descriptive language combined with how everything's delivered line by line, which makes the word cutscenes feel disjointed from itself, as you have to remember what the previous line said while cutting through the words to get to what's actually going on. There is a lot of ambiguity and not much of anything that's directly stated. Some things do connect as you watch more of the sacraments, which are cutscenes that tell a story that you unlock either by finding it or reaching an ending. However, things still stay vague and confusing. There is a Discord where you can discuss the story, and within this discussion thread there are some tips on how to decipher it. To me, it didn't help me understand the story more, but it did help me understand why I don't understand it. If you want to read to get a clearer view of the story, then I recommend going into the link that the developer posted. It doesn't go into how some of the sacraments, like the secret one, play into the story, but for the main one and all of its endings, then it has it covered. Even though the story is hard to grasp, the gameplay isn't difficult. I played it on normal, but I recommend playing it on hard. You can always change the difficulty too whenever you want, so you're not stuck into one. Lucah does go a bit Insano style in the free expansion called the Descent, where you go through a gauntlet. And through this gauntlet, you have to build up your score to keep your corruption down, or else you have to restart the entire thing. To keep your score high, you usually just have to keep up your combo and not get hit, and also finishing each encounter as quickly as possible. It's very fun and it lets you test how good you are at the combat. Descent does give more story, but nothing gets clear, although it is its own standalone story. I just don't know if it connects in any way to the main story at all, due to everything just being unclear, just like the main game. Some people in the discussions on Steam recommend doing it on New Game Plus since some items in the second playthrough make it easier, but it's doable on the first playthrough. I didn't notice much of a difference besides myself getting better at the game. It does feel like Descent has one too many levels considering that you have to restart the entire thing if you mess up. On top of that, the scoring system seems really wonky. For example, I might go hitless, finish the encounter fast, but I'd only get like an A or a B. Other times I might get my ass pounded into and barely make it out alive, and somehow I get an S. Honestly, sometimes I felt like the scoring system was a roll of the dice, but most of the time it does behave the way you would expect it to. There are 3 endings in Lucah, which one of them unlocks in New Game Plus mode. It took me about 4 hours to beat it, and another 4 hours for New Game Plus, both of which include playing through the Descent expansion. New Game Plus does add more story content in the way of word cutscenes, so nothing different in terms of what you'll play through, except for like the very last part for the different ending that you can get. In New Game Plus, your corruption level passively rises much quicker and is gained a lot more when you're hit, but it operates like the Descent expansion where if you score high enough, you can lose some corruption. So if you're good enough, you can keep your corruption level low for the entire game. The difficulty feels slightly higher where you won't easily blow through enemies like in the regular endgame, but it's still pretty easy on normal, so keep it at hard. Even with the new story content, it's still confusing on what's going on and how everything fits together. In terms of gameplay, there are 2 new mechanics: Revert, which resets your current chapter, that way you can try again if your corruption got too high, and Taunting, which increases the damage that you and your enemies take. I recommend not using Taunt for enemies that can hit you multiple times in a moment, or else you might die before you know it. There's also a delay in taunting that leaves you open for a second, so be aware of that when playing. There is a sequel in the works called Death of a Wish, which more information I'd assume be coming out sometime this year. Nonetheless, there is an itch.io page which you can use to stay up to date on the game's progress. Overall, Lucah is a very fun game with an aesthetically pleasing art style. It's just that the story is way too cryptic. However, I could just be in a small minority of people that just didn't understand the game's story too well. That's it for this one. Hope that you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching. See ya.